Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Rumble. And since the pager terrorist attack happened against Lebanon, I've seen several of you commenting in the live chat and also in the comments below and asking me to invite back Elijah Magnier. He's a veteran war correspondent and senior political risk analyst with over 37 years of experience in the region in West Asia. So here we are together today. We're going to have a live conversation about this dangerous incident that happened in Lebanon. Elijah, thank you so much, first of all, for coming to the show.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Kevork.
The pleasure is mine today. I have been following the news from Lebanon, and there was a second wave, let's say yesterday, attack against the Lebanese, this time with the walkie-talkies. But the past 2 days, the country witnessed, in my opinion, a very complicated, let's say, attack by Israel, which is now called the pager attack or the pager terrorist attack. And this has led to thousands of injured and scores of deaths among Hezbollah's combatants and also civilians. Some of them were kids. There are three theories or three arguments I'm reading on in the press and in the social media platforms. I would like to first tell you these three theories. The first theory says that this pager attack was explosives planted in these devices during the supply chain. The second one says that this was a software hacking that the Israelis have done. And the third one, which is more into conspiracy, they say this was an electromagnetic attack because in the second day we have seen some of the walkie-talkies that are old, like some of them are 10 years old and still they got blasted. What's your take on this attack, Elijah? Where do you stand between these theories?
I'm glad you bring out this very important topic, and I haven't heard all these conspiracy theory. I have never been fan of these conspiracy theories. However, let's deal with the fact. The first thing is there are hundreds of pagers that have not exploded. Therefore, because they were switched off, because there are always some malfunctioning in any electronic system, and because something goes wrong, like Israel bombed Gaza, and the finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said there are hundreds of unexploded bombs in Gaza that the Palestinian resistance is using against the Israeli occupation forces. So that's something normal. We know that in every war there are always bombs that are unexploded, and there is always an electronic attack that never fully successful, but acceptably successful. And that was within the range of a good range of successful attack. And through the examination of these pages, and then the second day, the batteries, I'm going to start with the first day because it's more important and allowed to shed more light on the second day. There is an importer who brings goods from abroad into Lebanon via a third country, particularly when there are goods that countries want to know who is the end user and sometimes do not accept to ship or to deliver these goods to Lebanon. And this importer bought two things. He bought batteries of all kinds and he bought pagers. And the way that the company in Bulgaria was contacted, it is normal in Europe that people think it is conspiracy theory. It is very frequent for companies to look for the most suitable country in Europe that ask for less taxes. And then these people establish their company there as a place where they pay the taxes, and then the operation is in another country. For example, many countries, French companies establish their companies in different parts of Eastern Europe, where the taxes are a bit lower than Western Europe, depending where in Western Europe. In France, is very high. In Belgium, even higher. And then they establish their operational base in Belgium, but the main base that pay the taxes, the address can be just a flat, or it can be even at the accountant. They don't need to rent a flat. and that would be okay legally. So what happened is that the buyer bought these pages and batteries from Europe, from Eastern Europe, and these pages exist also in Taiwan. They are made in Taiwan. Now,
Yes.
Taiwan did not deliver these pages to Hezbollah. That is out of the question. Taiwan is America, under the American control. But there are companies who act as brokers and buy pages through the manufacturer itself. And this is what happened. With a very attractive price, lower than the average market price, the buyer went and bought these pages and batteries. Now, what happened is that it is impossible. This is what I've been telling the Hungarian television just a while ago. It is impossible without the complicity of a third party that Israel can get hold of the material that are the batteries and the pages, open them, plant the battery, and then close them and then send them to a third country, because Israel cannot send any goods to Lebanon. There is a state of war. So there is always another country involved in this
Mm.
fiddling of merchandise. And what the Israeli did is they planted two things in the batteries. One part is a very small quantity of a very highly sensitive explosive, like Piton explosive. And then with it, they imitated ISIS, the Islamic State terrorist group, style in suicide belt. And they
Yes.
put metal balls in it. And these metal balls are the one that are killing, not the explosion itself,
Mm.
because the
Wow.
explosion is very small. Now, the shrapnel and all the fragmentation of the machine and the metal ball that caused people to have all their fingers cut, or if they had the pager close to their face reading what
Yes.
the message was, they've lost their eyesight. But many people that I heard, they had small metal balls in their neck, in their head, in their eyes, in their lungs, everywhere in their body, depending on where they were holding the pager. This is what triggered it. And what triggered this explosive, it is linked to the electronic circuit that received the radio signal from the drones and triggered these pages. And we can see that there are two kinds of signals that were put. One for the pagers and the battery inside, and one for the ICOM V84 that are defined as walkie-talkie, and the batteries for solar panel, etc. And why I say it's a terrorist attack? Because first, the solar system batteries are used by civilians.
Yes.
Pagers are used by all walks of people, doctors, nurses, paramedical troops, teachers, everybody in Lebanon who has access to buy an affordable, relatively cheap pager and keep one with his family, that reduces the cost of the communication and reduces the cost of internet, because in Lebanon you have to charge your phone with internet and pay for the communication, unlike here in Europe. You get 200 giga and calls for free all over Europe for 8 euros per month. This is not the case in Lebanon. So because of that, not only combatant but also non-combatant people had these pagers. Sorry.
صح.
And by triggering the signal, what the Israeli did is they sent error 3 times, error signal to the pager.
Mm.
And then the pager start vibrating violently. So people took it, either they put it on their legs, or they were driving a motorbike and they put it in one hand to read it and they got injured, or they didn't pay attention and they left it and then they reach a place. And these are the people who were least injured, because on the side there are bones and other components of the body that were not directly affected. Some people just lost their belt. Other people had a very minor injury, just left the hospital after a few first examination, and then that was it. So that was the first one. And because the pager is small and needs to contain the screen and also the electronic circuit and the battery, the quantity of explosive was tiny. And
Hmm.
this is why the importance of putting metal balls to trigger the casualties through these metal balls. The second day, what happened is the Icon V84, the walkie-talkie, has a bigger battery. Now, having a bigger battery, Israel implanted a bigger quantity of explosive. And this is why there are more people who lost their life with the second day, in the second day, more than the first day. And who uses these walkie-talkie? All the people who are in shops,
Yes.
commercial shops, people who are bodyguards or they are security in supermarket or big mall or shops that are prestigious shops. They all were affected by this explosion. And what happened is that both the pager is a very old system that Hezbollah uses. In 2006 was the perfect tool to use. Even if the Israelis can receive the signal, but the signal is ciphered, they are numbers. And those at the other end have a list of instruction what each number correspond to. And this is why it was impossible for the Israeli to stop the communication and control of Hezbollah during the war in 2006. What happened now is that the old pager still works. Many people refuse to take the new pager. And the new pager that was distributed to 3,000 people, around 4,000 people, I mean, we're talking about the body in Hezbollah that between 120 to 150,000, according to what the Israelis told us, which means we're talking about what a very small percentage of people who were affected of all walks of life, including different branches of Hezbollah, combatant and non-combatant. Now, the walkie-talkie is also, again, another system. And why I am trying to reduce the importance of this system for a simple reason. Had Israel been uh, convinced that the pager and the Icon V84 useful and essential for Hezbollah's communication, they would have exploded these during a battle,
Yes.
but not before. But because they see the lack of benefit and the importance for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, to carry out a folkloric attack, because this is what he loves. He went to Hodeidah and he burned the oil at the harbor in Yemen, but he received the next few weeks a ballistic hypersonic missile. He did
Yes.
not deter Yemen, but he only said, look at Yemen is at the Hodeidah harbor is burning. So he wants to gain some attention by saying, I am capable. That without saying that Israel is not capable. On the contrary, it was a very successful operation. And there are many breach in this operation that in the security they should have looked very carefully in what they had in their hands. But 90% of Hezbollah communication system is through wires.
Mm.
So they have a city under the ground in the south of Lebanon in the Bekaa Valley, and they're all cables that they communicate with. And a small part of their wireless communication system, because they have other system or wireless communication system like relay, they put everywhere and they communicate with other countries, including Syria and Iran, through these relays. So they have a wireless communication system where they rely less on, but the heavy reliance is on a wire communication system that has not been touched. Bottom line, the communication system is still working perfectly well. The pages are still working because there are pages in the hand of Hezbollah since a very long time, and the walkie-talkie, only those who changed the battery, they were exposed, and that's it. So the operation was successful, but strategically very limited.
Yeah. Dear Elijah, I have written 6 questions for you, and you answered them all in this 15 minutes. It was amazing explanation, really. Like I'm thankful because I also learned many of the details now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Elijah. In 2006, when Hezbollah managed to push the Israeli occupation out of Lebanon when they invaded southern Lebanon, one of the main factors why Hezbollah was successful because of its secure internal communication system. As you mentioned, it was wired. And is it correct that after that, in 2006, there was an American government back then headed by Fuad Signora, and they wanted to ban this communication system, right? So this is too important for Hezbollah, this wired system, in order to keep its secrecy of the operations.
That is true. The communication system is very important, and that was a landline fiber optic. Now, it's good that you mentioned because I didn't want to go through it. Some people know that the fiber optic landline has been compromised. That is correct. And not long ago, the Hezbollah learned that Japan communicated the enough information to Israel about the machines and that are used by Hezbollah, and that compromised the landline communication system. Well, immediately, Hezbollah switched to another system that is not compromised and is not made in any pro-Western and Western country. And this is the new system they are using that is not compromised anymore. So this battle of brain between Israel and Hezbollah is ongoing and will continue ongoing always. There is a difference, however. We're talking about a non-state actor with limited capability against Israel that enjoys the support of all the Western companies, all the Western countries, and the allies of the Western countries on all level in commerce, industry, electronic, intelligence, weaponry, everything. This is why it is important to highlight the fact that Israel is a colossal enemy with a fantastic tools and equipment and military apparatus and intelligence, but the smallest of all the non-state actors, like the Palestinian resistance, has managed to stand against it and made sure that no white flag has been raised in Gaza, and that the Israelis, with all their might, failed to release all the captives in the Gaza Strip. That is very tiny. So you can imagine all the noise that Benjamin Netanyahu is making about Lebanon, that he's not going to achieve any of his objectives in a formidable non-state actor like Hezbollah that has very large possibilities to have enough missiles and enough military equipment to stand against Israel and inflict serious damage on Israel.
Elijah, a minute or two before we started this stream, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, gave a speech, 1 hour speech. Was there anything significant in the speech in terms of Hezbollah's position on these attacks and how the party may retaliate against the Israeli side?
Well, there are two main points. First, Sayyid Nasrallah said that the main focus is Gaza. Stop the war on Gaza, we will stop. Otherwise, Lebanon will continue fighting in support of the people, of the Palestinian people, from the human approach, because there are people who are massacred in Gaza and the whole world is watching without doing anything. And the second one, he said, we will get our revenge. It was a successful operation. This is what Sayyid Nasrallah said. Yes, the Israelis managed to score a point, and it is important to recognize this point and then to work accordingly to make sure that the challenge of such a enemy of this kind of caliber will help all the non-state actors, the resistance everywhere, who wants to fight for their freedom, to learn from it, to be able to stand and confront it.
Elijah, one of the unintended consequences, multiple unintended consequences actually, after this blast, personally, I saw huge sympathy now with Hezbollah. And people, especially from Western countries, those who do not know, in the past decade, there was a consistent, let's say, media campaign against Hezbollah, trying to portray it as an enemy of Palestine and an enemy of Syria because of the involvement of Hezbollah against the terrorist groups in Syria. But this started to shift, as I realized yesterday. Many people are showing sympathy with Hezbollah for its support for the Palestinians in Gaza, including people who disagree with Hezbollah. It seems that the public opinion is also shifting in favor of Hezbollah, including on the government level. I mean, today I read the statement of the foreign minister of Lebanon, who used to play a mediator role, right, between Hezbollah and the Western powers who were trying to de-escalate this conflict. And now the foreign minister of Lebanon says, quote, "We cannot urge restraint to Hezbollah after Israeli terror attacks." So do you see now more popular support to Hezbollah in Lebanon and in the region? And also, like, there were some limitations put on Hezbollah not to escalate much against Hezbollah because of these internal pressures and also government pressures. Do you see that those restrictions are being lifted now?
I think what happened in the last 48 hours is extremely important. You spoke about something, but it has several layers. So I'm going to take one at a time. First of all, I heard the Lebanese health minister today calling all those who suffered fatalities from the Israeli terrorist sabotage attack. He called them martyrs, and he did not exclude some people like Hezbollah combatant and the civilians non-combatant, which means that the Lebanese government, where Hezbollah has ministers and members of the parliament, is adopting the Lebanese resistance. And the resistance is legitimized by the United Nations, even the armed resistance. There are many United Nations Security Council resolutions that give the right of people to use the military means against the occupier. And Israel still occupy part of the Lebanese territory. That is one. Secondly, among the population in Lebanon, what happened, it's important because it shows to those who are asking and urging Hezbollah to increase the attack on Israel that Israel is not to be underestimated, and to trust how the resistance is dealing with the Israelis in its own pace and its own tools, understanding with whom they are dealing with and what Israel is capable of. It means increase the determination to support the resistance and rally behind it without criticizing it why it is not doing more. Third, we've seen people offering and rushing into hospital to participate in the support of all the injured people by blood or by financial means, etc., because they want to express solidarity. We've seen doctors, members of the Lebanese parliament, crying, eye doctors, because of what they have saying, Christian, Druze, or Muslims. It's the same. These Lebanese people are all united against the Israeli. Another point is this attack united the whole of Lebanon more behind Hezbollah. Why? Because Hezbollah is a Lebanese resistance, and because Israel is an enemy that is, according to the ICC, led by a war criminal. Netanyahu and his defense minister, according to the highest court in the world, are criminals, are war criminals. And in relation to that, anyone who supports Israel and is doing led by a war criminal is supporting a war crime legally. And legally, the resistance has a right to defend itself against the occupier. Therefore, Israel is an occupation force that needs to be fought against. This is something that the Lebanese are starting to understand a bit more. Now, the last point you've raised is the Arabs around the world, in the Middle East and around the world. After the war in Syria, there was something that broke between Hezbollah and many of the Arab population and population around the world. However, with the support of Palestine, with the support of Palestinian people that were left on their own, when we in Europe consider that human value is important, that human right is important, that international law is above everything, we have shown a level of hypocrisy that cannot match anything else. And because we have a non state actor accepting hundreds of casualties, hundreds of fatalities, thousands of injuries in support of the people of Palestine, ready to support it on the human level, there is no human being who would not admire that.
Yes.
And admiring the support of the human side in the Lebanese resistance and the Lebanese people, because it's not only Hezbollah that is fighting in Lebanon. All the Lebanese society that stands against Hezbollah are the real fighters, because without them, Hezbollah can never survive. And this is why they all committed to support the Palestinian population that are left on their own to their own destiny under a brutal criminal enemy like the Israelis.
I've seen many comments also, Elijah, on X, especially in Arabic language. Many of the people in the region, not in Syria, not in Lebanon, now understand why Hezbollah intervened in Syria and for what purpose strategically, and also with the gloating that we have seen by what is called the Syrian revolutionary activists also who were fighting against the Syrian government in the past decade. They were celebrating the casualties among the Hezbollah, and this has completely destroyed the American propaganda in the past decade or two against Hezbollah after this Israeli attack. But one thing I also realized now, people asking the question, and I don't know what's your position on this. Do you also see that people now asking to revisit what happened in the Beirut port in 2020? Who did the blast? Was it only a human negligence, or there was a trigger that blew up the Beirut port, which was, of course, as a consequence, activated and increased the traffic to Haifa port?
Um, I don't agree with that for the simple reason that I have investigated at that time what happened at the port, and I produced documents of the investigation or letters sent by generals investigating the harbor and writing reports about all the products, the chemical products that were at the harbor, and how they stagnated there for many years, and how there were reports asking the Lebanese army to take it away, and they didn't. And until the end, when there was a breach in the wall and people were stealing from these chemical products that were used as fertilizer. And what the decision of the judge was is to put a bar door to prevent people from coming in and stealing it. And this is where the Hammersmith went there, and he was working with all his unsafe material on top of these products. And in the same harbor, in the same hangars, there were painting and there were firework confiscated. So there were many elements that could trigger the explosion. a combination of all that with a fire that started very early and after 4 hours before the full blast. And the only alarm that was given to the last moment, that what caused the blast. It was a negligence. It was not an Israeli attack.
Good. I have just my suspicions. I'm not an expert on this, and it's good to correct me because yesterday I also seen multiple people tweeting that we have to revisit what happened in the Beirut blast, and I have a family member who died in this blast in 2020, the uncle of my father in his home. It's important to know if it was only a human negligence or they were also foreign hands. Elijah, last question. I would like to show you an article published today in a British press, and I don't know if we have to really call them a press any longer. This is coming from the Mail Online, and they say history teaches us that no new military technique remains a monopoly of its inventor for long. How long before Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping works out how to make millions of iPhones around the world burst into flames in the pockets of their foes? Are our phones in our hands are vulnerable now into explosion, or this is hysteria?
Well, if we put this technique in the hand of the Israelis, then we have a lot to worry about. But because they are the one who use this technique, but we have to be extremely worried about anything that comes to the hand of the Israelis. And I think what they have done today is they have put pager companies in bankruptcy. They have raised the alarm in the battery industry where nobody is trusting anymore the market because of what they have done, but they really don't care. And not only that, the problem is the silence of the international community. Nobody is saying anything. I had someone coming from Hanover today for an interview, and he had battery, and he asked me, "Is it safe to use my battery?" I said, "Depends. If you bought it in Israel, no. But if you bought it in Germany, perhaps yes, depending if it is important from Israel or not." So
Yes.
there are serious concern around the world today about what happened and linked to any electronic that can be tampered with. The
Yes.
question is, which is a legitimate question, why Israel did not put a GPS in these pagers to localize every single member of
Yes.
Hezbollah and non-combatant and combatant that are using it? For one reason, the objective was not intelligence. The objective was criminal, was to kill, was not to learn more about the movement of the enemy and to learn more where they are located. So they were not interested in trying to deal with Hezbollah only, but they wanted to send a message to the Lebanese community that look what Hezbollah is doing, which is exactly the same what they have done in Gaza by destroying Gaza to turn the population against the resistance. They failed. And again, they failed in Lebanon, and the population is expressing solidarity. And this is something Lloyd Austin, the defense minister, the defense secretary, the secretary of defense of the US, he advised Israel at the first beginning of the war, don't make our mistake. We did so many wars in the Middle East and we failed to earn the heart and the mind of the population. Well, Israel is repeating their master's mistake, the Americans, and they don't understand really how to give the right to the Palestinian withdraw from the occupied territory instead of waging wars all the time.
Indeed, they are committing even worse mistakes than their American masters. Excuse my ignorance, Elijah, just a follow up question. Just people are asking me this question, if somebody has a Western made mobile now and somebody has bought this from the market, is there any danger to it, or it has to go first into third hand, which has to be planted in it some explosives? Can a battery just explode without a trigger, or it has to go into, so the compromise has to happen in the supply chain?
So there are some incident of battery overheated in the past that this is something that companies overcome. Nothing can be planted in the phone unless a third party is taking it. So they need to physically get hold of the phone. Like the Israelis got hold of the pages, of the batteries, they tempered it and then they send it back.
Mm.
It's impossible to send an electric wave or radio signal or any electronic signals just to trigger a machine to explode. So what happened is the signal went to the explosive to explode, linked to the circuit that gives the order. And
Mm.
by manipulating it or to trying to stop it, people trigger the explosive. So the criminal intention doesn't stop there. There was a delay of several seconds,
Yes.
enough to give people time to hold the pager. So the intention is to kill. It is not it beepers and then it explodes. No, there was a delay, and this delay created a severe damage on the people who were using the pager.
Guys, we are 500 people now watching this live streaming between YouTube and Rumble. It will be watched by around 10,000 people in 48 hours. So if you want to support the independent work of Elijah, his X account is in the description below, and also his website where you can read and also get the newsletter, what he is actually publishing on his website, even in different languages. So you can simply also follow him on X and he posts his articles, or you can also see his website as well. And if you like to support my work, you can just hit the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. That would be a great help for me. Elijah, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your wisdom with the audience of Syriana Analysis.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you so much, guys, for tuning for today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, and we will see each other tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.